Hi, I'm Ray and you're watching PhoneArena's video comparison between two sizzling hot smartphones right now, the HTC One M8 and the Sony Xperia Z1S, or just Z1 as it's known outside the US. So this comparison is actually somewhat special because we get to explore two handsets that are relentless in their efforts to impress us with their remarkable designs and quality feel. Indeed, both of them are stunning in their own way. The HTC One M8 has this gorgeous metal exterior with an amazing new gunmetal finish, while the Xperia Z1S has its classic all-glass and metal construction. Aside from that, the two contestants are also extremely well equipped under the hood. However, the M8 has just come out, while the Z1S has been available for quite some time now. But even though time is on the new one side, it appears that this is still going to be a very close matchup. Design is one of the areas where both the HTC One M8 and Sony Xperia Z1S hope to captivate consumers the most. Yes, they are both very ambitious in the design department, but interestingly they have gone down two completely different paths when it comes to appearance and construction. First on the line is the One M8, which mostly stays true to its predecessor's aluminum body. However, the M8 builds on it by featuring even more metal. Gone are the polycarbonate plastic sides which the original One M7 had. Now the One M8 sports a smoother, almost all-metal exterior that is every bit as slippery as the M7, but has become even more exquisite looking. Meanwhile, the Sony Xperia Z1S utilizes tough glass surfaces for its front and back sides, all surrounded by a metal frame that adds some much needed contrast and an extra touch of class to the phone's overall appearance. Neither phone is especially comfortable to hold, but the Z1S seems to be a bit better in this respect, as its glass back tends to be less slippery. On the other hand, the One M8 is a bit narrower, plus its rounded edges make it feel slightly more compact. As far as weight goes, both handsets are quite imposing, but Sony's Xperia Z1S 6.0 ounces or 170 grams slightly outweigh the One M8's 5.64 ounce or 160 grams. The Xperia Z1S features a well-made two-step camera shutter key, but overall its hardware buttons aren't as clicky as those of the HTC One M8. Taking a look at the visual peculiarities of the two devices, we can definitely point out the HTC One M8's dual camera setup. In contrast, the Sony Xperia Z1S has a charging dock connector on its left-hand side. But what we really like in this handset is the fact that it is IP58 certified, adding a substantial degree of resistance against water and dust. At 5 inches and 1080 by 1920 pixels, the HTC One M8 and the Sony Xperia Z1S have displays of equal size and resolution. Needless to say, both presents us with more than enough viewing area, as well as perfectly fine resolution, thanks to the extremely high pixel density of 441 pixels per inch. The devil is in the details though, so if we take a look at our scientific display measurements, we can quickly notice that the HTC One M8's IPS LCD screen is more accurate and balanced than the TN LCD panel of the Sony Xperia Z1S. Maximum brightness is about the same for both handsets at about 490 nits, but color temperature, gamma and delta E are all slightly better on the One M8, suggesting an overall superior screen. The M8 can also get slightly dimmer than the Z1S, so it'll be just a bit more comfortable to view in the dark. Meanwhile, its viewing angles are also better, as the TN LCD panels used by Sony on pre-Z1 compact phones are notoriously poor in this respect. Both user interfaces are quite profound, as they customize almost every core OS application such as contacts, messaging, calendar and others. Luckily, Sense UI on the HTC and Xperia UI on the Sony offers strong alternatives to the stock applications, so users have no reason to feel bad about having an Android smartphone with a custom interface. Apart from their customized apps, Sense UI and Xperia UI offer some unique features to entice customers with. To start with, HTC One M8 sports the Blink Feed news and social networking aggregator. The feature has gotten smarter in the M8, detecting what you're more interested in with a higher degree of success. Plus, it's now integrated with Fitbit, so if you're a fan of the service, then you have an additional reason to give Blink Feed a try. Moving on to other unique aspects of the M8's UI, it's the new motion gestures that capture our attention. Instead of trying to create something fancy but gimmicky, HTC has actually come up with a few really useful gestures. We already mentioned double tap to wake, which is used to wake the display up and view the lock screen. However, you can also directly unlock your phone from an idle state by doing a swipe up gesture. On the other hand, on the Z1S we can point out things like Sony's small applications, which can be used to give your multitasking game an edge. Another cool option is the display color balance setting, allowing you to tweak the colors of the screen to your own liking. The One M8 Snapdragon 801 SoC is slightly more powerful than the Z1S's Snapdragon 800, although that difference won't make such a big real-world effect. Still, you'd never see us running away from the prospect of having a faster chipset, so yeah, the M8 sure is the more desirable option on that performance front. Getting a bit more specific, the HTC One M8 relies on 4 Cray 400 cores, each of which can be revved up to 2.3 GHz. Meanwhile, the Xperia Z1S's speed limiter is almost equally generous, as its 4 Cray 400 cores can reach 2.2 GHz if need be. Being seemingly the same on paper, the Adreno 330 GPUs powering the two phones will no doubt guarantee superior graphics performance. However, in various scenarios, the one in the M8 should be able to perform up to 28% faster than its counterpart in the Z1S. RAM is set to the healthy amount of 2 GB on both devices, but there is a slight difference when it comes to their storage options. Namely, the HTC One M8 comes in variants with 16 and 32 GB of internal storage, while the Sony Xperia Z1S is only available with 16 GB of storage space. Thankfully though, both phones sport microSD card slots, letting you insert memory cards in order to expand their storage. HTC is continuing to bet on its ultra-pixel camera. First introduced last year with the HTC One, we've seen it become a staple feature in HTC's flagship portfolio of late. It features the identically sized 4-megapixel 1/3-inch sensor, resulting in larger than normal 2-micron pixels. However, this comes at the cost of having a relatively low image resolution of just 4 megapixels. As before, the camera comes with a wide f2.0 lens, but this time the flash is updated to feature two differently colored LEDs called Smart Flash. Sadly, the M8 no longer features optical stabilization, it's been replaced by a software one. In this newest device, HTC is experimenting on something new by carrying along a secondary camera used specifically to measure depth information, so that the camera can cast various focus onto different depths throughout the shot. The so-called dual camera allows you to apply a number of eye-catching effects to your images, the most intriguing one being shallow depth of field. At the same time, the beefy 20.7 megapixel camera of the Sony Xperia Z1 presents users with a strikingly different concept. With a larger sensor with a size of 1/2.3 inches, the Z1's camera will still have pixels of tolerable size at 1.1 micron, despite their greater number. This should help keep noise at reasonable levels. Meanwhile, the aperture is identically wide at f2.0, which should help the camera achieve good results in low light conditions, as it will allow a good deal of light to reach the sensor. From the looks of it, HTC has done some slight improvements to the 4-megapixel ultra-pixel camera. As a result, photos captured by HTC's finest appear a bit more pleasant to the eye compared to those of its predecessor. But sadly, there's still much to ask for, especially when we take into account the competition, or in this case, the Xperia Z1S's G-Lens camera. The HTC One A-Mate's problem here is mostly in the details department, where the handset can in no way compete with the high-resolution camera of the Xperia Z1S. You may not experience this issue if you're just looking at your photos from a zoom-out view, but once you start zooming in or viewing them in actual size, you see just how much more information the Xperia Z1S captures. Colors also tend to be more pleasing with Sony's camera. The Xperia Z1S's images have a nice warmth and vividness to them, while the One M8's shots have a somewhat more uninviting look to them. When it comes to highly dynamic scenes, the Z1S once again tends to balance its images a bit better, while the M8 kind of ruined things up with a pinch of purple fringing. Indoor photos with the Xperia Z1S trump those of the HTC One M8 with their depth and detail, as well as realistic and pleasing colors. If we take things outdoors at night, however, we kind of gravitate towards the M8 as its photos turn out brighter, so you can see much more of the scene. Turning our attention to video recording, the 1080p resolution video recording of the HTC One M8 is pleasing to the eye as long as there is sufficient lighting around. By default, the phone has its focus locked when recording, which means that adjusting it is done via touch focus. Meanwhile, we're definitely not impressed by the 1080p video produced by the Xperia Z1S. Mostly smooth in nature, the 1080p video lacks fine details and liveliness. Both phones are very well equipped in the multimedia department, each sporting a sizable 5-inch display for enjoyable video playback and immersive gaming experience. In terms of quality though, we'd prefer the IPS LCD of the One M8 since it has livelier colors. In comparison, the Z1S's duller visuals make things a bit harder to look at, while its poorer viewing angles don't help either. Moving on to the audio aspect, the HTC One M8's front-facing boom sound speakers simply outclass the Z1S's solo speaker in both loudness and quality. Although most of the HTC Sense 6.0 music player functions appear similar to those of its predecessor, it's undeniably one of the more stylish music players out there. Meanwhile, the Sony Xperia Z1S is loaded with the signature Walkman music player, and boy is it a cool music app. Naturally, it has its own set of features and audio goodies to play with, and frankly, which offering is going to appeal to you more depends solely on your personal preferences. Not only are voices exquisitely loud and commanding with HTC One M8's earpiece, but they are also clear and noise-free, for the most part. All of this is making it very easy to hear our callers in extremely noisy situations. Although not really amazing, the Xperia Z1S also does a good job when it comes to sound quality during calls. Loudness is just enough, while voices tend to sound clear enough to be easy to comprehend. The HTC One M8 is equipped with a 2600 mAh battery, which doesn't seem as impressive as the Xperia Z1's 3000 mAh juice pack. However, having run both handsets through our custom battery life test, we've discovered that the HTC M8 can offer great longevity. It actually surpasses the Xperia Z1 in this respect, suggesting smarter power consumption on HTC's part. Naturally, your real-life results may vary greatly depending on your usage patterns, but as a whole, we expect the HTC One M8 to deliver slightly better battery life between the two. There is no doubt that the HTC One M8 is the better smartphone of the two, for the most part. The one area where the Xperia Z1S easily steals the show is the camera. as HTC's ultra-pixel thing continues to lag behind the competition. That is not to say that the 4-megapixel shooter of the M8 is poor. No, it's actually pretty good for casual use, but if you want superior performance from your smartphone's camera, then the 20.7-megapixel G-Lens snapper of the Xperia Z1S will do a better job. Aside from that, the One M8 sports a newer chipset, better screen, nice front-facing speakers, and better battery life. In terms of exterior, well, both handsets are spectacular. The Z1S has the advantage of being water and dust resistant, but it's like the new one is the more likely phone to win a design award. Similarly, both handsets offer very nice and polished custom user interfaces, with that of the one being just a notch fancier. At the end of the day, the more advanced technology in the One M8 allows it to bestow consumers with an overall better experience, except for the camera department. But we wouldn't have declared it a clear winner if it wasn't for the immense amount of work that HTC has put into the design of this gorgeous smartphone. So thank you for watching our video comparison between the HTC One M8 and the Sony Xperia Z1S. If you'd like to learn more about these two handsets, just visit us at PhoneArena.com.